All right, welcome back again. So time to talk about functions. Functions are important. We probably ought to learn about them. So in Swift, the way functions looked is you use the keyword func, and then you put the parameters inside the parentheses, and then you put an arrow for the return at the end. Objective-C works very different, right? So you say whether it's a class method or an instance method with this minus or plus. You put the return value to the left, which is weird, but that's how most programming languages work. And then you say the function name, and we'll talk about parameters later. It's also different in that there's a .h file and the .m file. So if you want to make it externally available, it's got to go into the .h. Another thing we didn't say about Swift is it does have class methods as well. You just write the word class in front of it. We just kind of never talked about it when we were doing Swift, but it is easy to make class methods there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and dive back into our project and open the view controller. And we're going to switch it from collections over to functions. And we're going to start by actually writing some things into the .h file. What we're going to do is we're just going to add a couple of different functions just to kind of play with things. So the first decision you make when you make a function, so we're just going to make the prototypes for them, is whether it's a class method or an instance method. I'll tell you what, we'll make one of each. We'll make one class method and one instance method. We're going to make both of these things return NS strings. So that's going to be the return value for both of them. And then we'll call the first one fortune cookie, and it'll receive no parameters. And then we'll call the second one magic 8-ball, and it'll receive no parameters. If we did want to make functions that receive parameters, we can kind of show you that as well. So we'll make a couple more functions. I'll just kind of keep returning strings for a little bit here. We'll make a function called superhero name. And what I want it to do is I want to receive a parameter. So it's going to receive your name, and then it's going to tell you your superhero name. The syntax on passing parameters is probably not what you would guess. And that's that you have parentheses around the type, and then you have the name. So how does that look if you're doing multiple things? So I'll just make another class method here. This one will return a double, and we'll call it calculate box volume. Now, one of the things that makes Objective-C weird is it's very common when you have a lot of parameters to kind of like say what the parameter is. So I'll just say calculate box volume for length, and then this first thing will be the length. And then I'll say for width. And you don't have to say the word for. I think in my slides I didn't say the word for, but it's no problem to say the word for in there. And then you can also say for height. And that's going to also be a double. And you'll notice that the compiler is trying, or sorry, the Xcode is trying to help me out with the formatting. And it's putting these to where the colons all line up. Now, whether you use like this grammatical modifier or not, it's entirely up to you. Some people say like, with this, or using that, or for this. To be honest, I find it a fun game, and the nice thing is the compiler helps you type them. So if you want to include these little colorful things to make your function more readable, you can, but you certainly don't have to. You could have just said width, length, height. You do have to have something here, though. So this is why Swift had to have external parameter names, because this is like part of the function name. It's kind of interesting that the name of this function is actually calculate box volume for length colon, for width colon, for height colon. The colon is considered part of the function name, which is kind of interesting. All right, so we've made some signatures here for some different functions, 3 class methods, 1 instance method. Let's go write them. What I like to do is I just like to copy whatever was in my header file, toggle over to the implementation file, paste it on here, and then basically just change that semicolon that was used for the prototype into an opening and closing curly brace. So that looks pretty good. All right, it's yelling at me because I haven't put a return value on some of these things. If you wanted to make that, just like go away, you could just say return nil or something like that. Oh, I guess since that was a primitive, I have to say return 0. For some reason, it really bothers me to see syntax errors, so I'll type return nil, except for sometimes I'll forget to go implement the function, and I'll be like, return nil all the time. What was that all about? I don't really want to type fortune cookie. I'm actually just going to copy paste it from the solution, and then we'll talk about it. So there you go. I just brought those in. So it's a number of friends. It's getting a random number from 0 to 300, and I'm saying that's how many friends you'll have on Facebook, and then from 0 to 10, or sorry, 1 to 10, how many friends you'll have on Google+. So a little joke here of the two things. What I did want to show though is, and so you can see they both return a string. What I did want to show is, just the differences in how you call these things. So if you wanted to call the first one, it's a class method. So I could just say nslog, and then I'll just say the name of the function that I'm calling, so fortune cookie, and I'll just print whatever it gives me. And since that one's a class method, I just say functions fortune cookie, right? And so that's how that one gets called. If I wanted to do it a couple times, I could, probably with semicolons. However, the magic 8-ball is an instance method. So if I wanted to call magic 8-ball, I would have to actually make an instance of the functions class. I'll just call it F here. Obviously, functions is not the greatest name for a class, but I have to have an instance to do anything here, right? And so if I wanted to make some logs of magic 8-ball, I would have to change to the function magic 8-ball, but then more importantly, I would have to call it on an instance and not the class. So I just call it on F. So if I run this, I should get a couple messages about, so I have 36 and 36 on Facebook, 5 on Google+, and then a 0 on Google+. So I guess it does go from 0 to 9. And they should be random, right? So if you run it again, here I've got a few hundred friends on Facebook. Oh man, another 0 in Google+. It's my unlucky day. And you can play around with that to your heart's content. But really, I just wanted to show you an instance method and a class method. We're using class methods a lot here because they're good for the way I'm doing the example. But instance methods are what you write most of your code is going to be, right? Let's go ahead and implement the other functions as well. So the superhero name, it's fairly short. I'll just go ahead and type it. I'm just going to return a string with formats. And what it's going to do is it's just going to say super, and then it's going to put your name and an exclamation point. And what the heck, I'll take your name and I'll make it be uppercase as well. So there we're just calling a function with a single parameter. While I'm down here, I'm just going to write the next one as well because it's just length times width times height. Pretty simple function there. And then I want to go call these things. So I'll just go ahead and do a log for each one. So I'll just say, superhero name, and I'll just say equals %at. And I'll just call it on the functions class because it's a class method. And superhero name, we pass in a parameter. That works just like you would expect. No real shocks there. And then if we wanted to do something for the volume, we'll just say volume equals %f because it's going to be a double coming back. And we'll just say functions, calculate. And you can see it does a great job of helping with code completion. So you can really kind of make these functions as long as you like. And I'll put in 3, 4, and 5. The dot after is completely optional. I just like to do that to show that it's a double. Another thing I like to do is I kind of like to let the compiler line up the colons. I just think that looks a little bit better. All right, so if this thing runs, you can see it says superhero name, Super Dave, and then my volume is 60.000 without any units because I didn't give them units. All right, so that's the basics of functions. To be honest, they're pretty easy, especially once you get used to this concept of calling it with brackets and kind of putting the name inside of it. I think it's because the compiler helps you out writing them so much that I don't really find them challenging at all. And in fact, sometimes they're like even readable, right? So it says functions, calculate box volume for length this, for width that, for height that. So it's kind of self-documenting as you go. So I do really like that feature. All right, that's all we got. I'll see you next time. Bye.